Hello, my most amazing artists. Last week, we learned about all different kinds of lines and used a special new tool called oil pastels to create those lines on our papers. Now, we made all different kinds of lines: curly, wavy, straight, horizontal, diagonal, vertical, swirly, zigzag, wavy, dashed, dotted, all different kinds of lines, and you could have made those lines with all different colors of oil pastels. If you were here with us last week, your paper will be in your table folder. That's the color bin on your table of the color team you sit at. Hopefully, you wrote your name and class code on the back of your paper so that you are able to easily find which one is your paper. If you did not write your name on your paper on the back, please make sure to do so in pencil the very first thing today so that we don't get confused about which one is your paper. It's very important that you always write your name and class code on the back. That way Miss Q always knows exactly whose paper it is, just in case it gets lost. And in case you forget which one's yours, it's always a good idea to write that class code too and your name in your table folder. Now today, it's super important because these will not be going back in the table folder, because today we are finished with our oil pastels. Unless you weren't here last week, you'll get a chance to go ahead and make your lines on your paper. After we have your papers with all different kinds of lines with different parts of your paper leaving room for the white space, we are going to be filling in that white space that you left room for with paint. Today is our very first day of painting in art class this year. I cannot wait to show you the kinds of special paints we get to use, as well as teach you about how we paint in art class, because there are quite a few new rules. The types of paints you'll be using today are called tempera cakes. No, it's not the kind of cake you can eat. It's just because it's shaped like a cake. There's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, dark blue, and purple. Now you'll notice that these paints are dry right now. That's because they need water to make them work. So today you will have your tempera cakes as well as a bowl of water and brushes with a sponge on your table. And that the only thing you pick up today is your paintbrush, not the paint bowl, not the sponge, and not the paints themselves. Everything's going to stay on a tray. The only thing you pick up is the paintbrush. Now these are super special paintbrushes. They are expensive and the best paintbrushes I can buy you. We never hold our paintbrushes by the hairs. We also don't hold it by the gold part. That's called the danger zone, because if you hold it there, you're in danger of getting paint on your fingers. And if we hold it up here, you just won't have a lot of control of the brush. So we want to hold it right there on that nice little pillow for our fingers. That's what it's made for. Now you always want to make sure your paintbrush is having a good hair day. That means its tip of its hair is in a nice point. You never want to give your paintbrush a bad hair day, because that hurts your poor paintbrush and it's a lot harder to get his hair back nice and pointy. It's harder than brushing your hair. It's a lot harder with a paintbrush. So we always want to make sure to dip in the water. If it starts to drip, wipe it on the lip. Now we never tap, tap, tap on the edge of the bowl, because that could also give your paintbrush a bad hair day and also hurt it. So if anybody accidentally does that, you can get your hair in a good hair day again by dipping in the water, wiping on the lip of the bowl, and then going to the sponge to make the letter X. Now when we start to paint, we swirl our paintbrushes around in the paint. When you're swirling in the paint, you want to make sure to keep your paintbrush like a ballerina on its tippy toes. Never ever what I just did, which was scooting around on its bottom, smashing it down. Paintbrushes like to stay dancing on their tippy toes. Never ever scooting around on their bottom, because nobody wants to go to the booty scootin' ballet. So when you're painting like a ballerina on its tippy toes, you want to glide that paintbrush all in the same direction, or one direction, across your paper. Now I decided to start with red, and I had to say, wake up red, to the paint to wake it up. We never want to smash down on that paintbrush, because not only will it ruin your painting, but most importantly will ruin Mr. Paintbrush. It's very hard to give him back a good hair day, but it is possible if somebody makes a mistake. Now if I see anybody smashing down Mr. Paintbrush too often, you will be taking a painting break. So please make sure to keep him on his tippy toes, never ever scooting around on that bottom and being smashed down. Now if you notice that your paintbrush starts to get scratchy, that means that it's thirsty. It needs more water. These paints need water to wake them up. But you want to make sure to wash your paintbrush before going to a new color. So I want to give them a bath. I don't want to. You have to take a bath, but I don't want to. Yes, you do, Mr. Paintbrush. You have to give them a bath. Then wipe off on the lip of the bowl or the edge so that you don't drip, and dance around in the paint. The longer you dance in the paint, the brighter your color will be. You only want the paint to be on the hairs of the brush though, so make sure that when you're dancing, you're on the tippy toes. You'll notice that the longer you dance, the brighter your color will be. But you do also want to have enough water. If your paint starts to get scratchy and you can see the white paper through the paint, that means it needs more water. You could just dip the little bits of the hairs back in there. I didn't give my paintbrush a good enough bath and it got all yucky. So please make sure that you are washing your paintbrush before going to a new color. If I want to go to yellow, I have to give Mr. Paintbrush a good bath before I switch my color. Otherwise, the next person who wants yellow is going to have maybe a muddy brown or a different color in their yellow, and that's not cool. We want to make sure we keep the colors nice and bright and nice. So when I'm painting, you'll notice I'm painting in the different sections that I made with my oil pastel. The nice part about oil pastel is that you can glide right over it with your paintbrush because the oil pastel pushes off the paint. But I notice I don't mix my two colors of paints together. So if I have a green next to my yellow, I don't mix them together. I'm just going around those lines that I drew with my oil pastel. So I can go over top of lines, say like the swirls, I'm gonna go over top of them. But notice I'm stopping when the oil pastel stops. That way, I leave room for another color of paint next door. I'm not just painting my paper all one color. I'm switching my color every time that I see a new line. So within every line, I am filling in with a new color. So if I am between my curly line and my swirly line or my spiral line, I'm gonna pick a new color in between those. That's why we made our lines in all different directions so you would have different shapes created to paint inside of today. Please make sure that you're filling in all of your white spots on your paper. Even in any little tiny spots, like say those curlies, I can paint right over inside of them and it pushes off the paint. Always keeping my paintbrush like a ballerina on her tippy toes and scooting it all in one direction. Never smashing it down on its bottom though, because nobody wants to go to the booty scooting ballet. I want to make sure that I fill in all of my white spots on my paper before I say I'm done. I'm also trying to use at least one of every color so I get to see how they work. Now remember, if you add too much water to a color, that color is going to not work too well. Also, if you add too much water to your paper could even rip. It's okay to do the same color in a couple of places as long as that place isn't next to each other. I wouldn't want to take my purple and paint over my whole paper because then I'm not practicing switching my brush and washing it. Clearly I forgot to wash my brush. Look what happened. It turned the yellow brown when I mixed it with the purple. If that happens and somebody makes a mistake, please let Miss Q know and she will come with a sponge and wipe off that color to get it clean again for the next painter that wants to use that nice, bright, beautiful color. Please make sure that you're not mixing your colors together because if you see here, when I mix even just a little bit of purple with yellow, it makes brown. If you mix all of these paints together on your paper, it will make muddy brown. You'll notice that the water also turns brown because everybody's using all the colors. I used all the colors of the rainbow, so it made all of the colors on my water, which makes brown. You don't want to do that on your paper though. Finally, when your painting's done and it's your best work with all your white spots filled in, you can pick up your painting. This is the only time we pick up our papers, when we're ready to put them on something called the drying rack. This is where we put our paintings to dry, but we never hold them with one hand. We always want to hold them with two hands like the most important pizza that we've ever delivered. You want to hold your painting with two hands like a pizza to keep it flat. You never would want to hold a pizza with just one hand because then all the cheese could fall off of it and it would drip. We also never want to hold our pizza paintings over the carpet because if they fell, the paint would get on the carpet. We always want to walk on the tile to get to the drying rack closest to us. If you sit at red, orange, or yellow teams and you're working, you'll push in your chair and go to the drying rack closest to you, which is this one next to the sink. If you're at the cool teams, like the green, blue, and purple cool color teams, you'll go to the drying rack closest to you in the other corner. You'll also want to put your apron in the trash can, on the table. No, you're going to want to hang up your apron right back where we got them from. When you're finished and put your painting on the drying rack and hang up your apron, it's time to go back to your table and open your bag of art wipes. Art wipes are what we use to clean up our hands and our area. We don't use the sink. So today I take out one art wipe. That's all I need to wash my hands first. I just wipe that paint off my hands, and then after I wipe my hands, I can wipe my table, because you probably are going to get a little bit of paint on it today, and that's okay. But we never want to put a used dirty art wipe back in the bin. We want to put it in the trash can. After you've cleaned up your area, make sure that your paintbrushes have the brush hairs down into the water side of the bowl. That way they get to soak and get cleaned up. You always want to keep them in a good hair day and have your paint tray looking just like this when you're finished. All right, awesome artists, can't wait for our first day of painting.